Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have a guest from Los Angeles today, Mher, and he is also a member of the Armenian Public Radio, which is a band and not a radio station. Mher, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tigran. Thanks for having me on.
You're probably the second guest at this point that I've actually met in person, and
Really?
probably one of the first guests on this that I've actually collaborated with, even though it was a very brief collaboration. Tell me a little bit about the band. We won't just talk about the band today, but tell me a little bit about the band and the origins, and also the interesting name choice that you had for the band.
The band. Let's start off there. We're a trio. We basically we play traditional Armenian songs. But we decided to kind of give it a modern twist. And as the project kind of went along, we kind of realized it's not even so much like a modern twist, but it's fusing the Armenian folk music and the American folk music together to kind of create something new. All three of us play guitar in the band, a little bit different styles, and then we have my cousin Sato is the lead vocalist, and then we have Ryan on lead guitars. I do more of the arpeggio and percussion stuff on the tracks, and yeah, as I was saying, as we kind of, as we're working, we're developing, we're realizing, kind of discovering what we're doing. We all realize, all of our we all grew up listening to American rock music. We listened to MTV Unplugged when we were teenagers. So all of that kind of influences what we do with this project. As far as the name, my wife many years ago, so the band started in 2011, 2012, I want to say. And right before that, my wife had a idea to do a podcast, much like you're doing now, about Armenian human interest stories. So we kind of had come up with this, with the name Armenian Public Radio for that, to kind of, as a play on National Public Radio.
Yeah.
So when we kind of got to doing this band, she was had given up on making that a reality, so she kindly let me take the name because I really liked it, and it kind of played into what we wanted to do. So even though we say we do Armenian traditional music, we kind of borrow from all the different canons of Armenian music. Yeah. So we do, old village songs, we do some gomidas, we've done pop songs.
Yeah.
And it's as far some songs we do are much newer compositions. Some songs are really old. So it's kind of like a radio station in that sense of you hear all sorts of things on it.
Yeah.
So that's basically the gist of it.
Well, it's great. This format, this podcast that I did, is fairly new, but I already have some people who are from all over the world that, although it's a small number of people, but there are a few that are really hardcore followers of this, and they listen to everything. Doesn't even matter if it's not in their field, but it's all music related. But it's also interesting to get some background, some history, and since a lot of these people that follow are not Armenians, you mind sharing a little bit of the history and the history of Diaspora, especially since you're very much involved in, especially the diaspora, the Armenian diaspora in LA? If whatever comes to mind, whether it's the history, if you want to bring up the genocide or prior to that, or even just the recent years of the Armenian diaspora in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, no problem. As some of your listeners might or might not know, all of this kind of, I guess, started with, everything we do as Armenians kind of goes back to the genocide, as much as we like it or not, but that's just the harsh truth of it. And just a little quick background, because I don't like harping on it too much,
Yeah.
but basically, right before the start of World War I and leading into it, the Ottoman Empire, for reasons that can be debated up the wazoo, decided to exterminate and evacuate most of the Armenians, or a very high percentage of the Armenians, out of the Ottoman Empire. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were forced to, they had death marches to the desert.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people ended up in neighboring Middle East countries like Syria, like some of my family. They also ended up in Lebanon. Some ended up in Iran and Iraq.
Yeah.
And then from there, some people were able to make their way to Europe. Some made their way to the United States.
Yeah.
So because of the genocide in 1915, we now have Armenians all over the globe. Mm-hmm. And actually, when they did the 100 commemoration in 2015 of the genocide, they had the logo. It's like a forget-me-not flower.
Yeah.
And one of the symbolisms in that was all the different continents that Armenians ended up after the genocide. Yeah. And they mentioned 5, and I was laughing, and I said, no, I count 6, and I wouldn't put it upon some crazy Armenian ended up in Antarctica as well.
Yeah.
So we're basically all over the world.
Yeah.
And we have this knack, as our great poet William Saroyan so aptly put it, or as I so beautifully put it, if 2 Armenians meet anywhere in the world, see if they'll not build a new Armenia. Yeah. And that's kind of what led us to this project.
Yeah.
Like, we get together and we're gonna continue keeping our culture alive, keeping our heritage alive wherever we may end up.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've noticed personally, as I've traveled, as I've met Armenians around the world, we've always, for the most part, been good citizens wherever we've ended up. Mm-hmm. So we have borrowed and given back to whatever community we ended up in. Mm-hmm. So that's very important to me in the project we're doing.
Yeah.
It's not just about keeping the Armenian music alive, but it's the incorporation with the American heritage and what that offered to us as people.
Yeah.
Getting that involved in it. And you see the same thing, one of my heroes is a guy named Bikan Tarkinyan, who also did a similar thing starting in the late 70s. And if you listen to his music, you'll see beautiful Armenian, a lot of the same songs we do, but his influence, because he ended up in France, he has a lot of French influence on his music. Likewise, I listened to another gentleman, Mher Vahakn Ajamian. Same with him. He ended up in Greece. You sense the Greek influence. Yeah. So there's something beautiful in all of that.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing that comes to mind is, and it's something that I'm sure some people think about. Someone might say you're losing the authentic nature of the music since you're mixing and using all these different genres from Greece, France, and the US. What do you say to those people who say you're mixing too much and we don't really hear the true Armenianness of the music?
I mean, that's for one thing. I think we have a lot of Armenian musicians that are very intent on keeping the original customs and tradition alive. That being said, I still, even with that, even the ones that are I would consider more traditional, if you really go back and look at it and study, and I'm not an ethnomusicologist by any means, but I have talked to a lot of people about this matter and that have studied much more than I have. I mean, what is pure is also always up to debate. Yeah. I mean, we lived for hundreds and hundreds of years in a region where borders shifted. Kings came and went. They got conquered. We conquered them. I mean, I've listened to Georgian music, to Turkish music, to Arabic music, and or Greek music, and certain songs or melodies that if you listen enough, you start finding a lot of similarities. So, I mean, to me, it's really presumptuous to say, oh, this is Armenian, this is Georgian, especially when you have so much crossover in between. Like, for example, I always thought, a group like, for example, the Mher Vahakn Ensemble is, purely Armenian. And I talked to a friend of mine who had done a thesis on it. He said, well, no, he goes, that's a very Soviet thing. Like, cause when Armenia was the little part of Armenia that we had left, when under Soviet rule, the Soviet organization wanted to create the standardized format, so they put together these ensembles and things were played a certain way. Like, that's not necessary. Like, that's again to a certain period of Armenian music. So to me, it's like all these different things are different periods. So what I come back to is, when I look at what we do and what other people around me have done, is how honest you are as an artist with yourself, with your surrounding. So it's like, what we do is, that is us. If someone from, let's say, that grew up in France is trying to do what we're doing, then it comes off as presumptuous, because maybe they haven't grown up listening to the same things we have. If just like if our music sounded like a mixture between Armenian folk music and, let's say, Charles Aznavour, that doesn't make any sense either.
If you were to describe or tell us the importance of communities and diasporas kind of mixing and creating these new styles, I guess, and just in general, not just for Armenians, but in general, I don't know if you know any other bands that do this from other parts of the world, but I'm sure there are. There's a big Mexican community in LA, and I'm sure they do very similar things in their communities. What's the importance of doing these kind of projects for the communities?
I was hoping you'd ask me this, and I've thought of this. I've thought about this a lot. I still think about it a lot. I'm not like 100% sure if I have an answer for that intellectually. I can tell you how it makes me feel doing what we do. It gives me joy. It fulfills my life. I'm happy to see other people enjoy it as much as we do, sometimes even more, which is a little baffling. But there is something to be said. I mean, when I analyze it, I kind of go back to the nature versus nurture argument. So there's something to be said about our nature, which is where our roots come from. There's, I feel, genetic memory. So certain types of melodies and our fondness for them, I think, are inherited through our parents, through our lineage. And then there's the nurture part, which is what you kind of grow up with, and what you're surrounded with, and the music you're listening to, and your friends are listening to, or the peers are listening to. So one of the things that kind of led us to start this project was, we just noticed how a lot of our friends were out of touch with, I guess, Armenian music, and because it sounded a certain way that sounded a little foreign to them. So we wanted to make something that sounded more like the music they enjoyed listening to, yet still had our roots in it, so that we can kind of keep the Armenian music alive and yet one more generation within the diaspora. And that's kind of been our goal as much as possible. Mm. And I do see it working because I have more than anything, or I always feel like the most fans we have are like under the age of 7. Because all our friends that have kids put the CD in the car, and for some reason the kids really love it. So I always think in the long run, it's like as we get older and these kids are getting older, you know, they're gonna keep listening to it. And I had a similar experience myself with the gentleman I was mentioning earlier from France, Vahakn Ajamian. I grew up listening to his LP as a child, and that was my introduction to Armenian music. So he kept it going for me personally, and my love for Armenian music, one generation. And I'm hoping we can do one more, and then somewhere down the line, someone else takes the torch, and so on and so forth.
One thing that was amazing, the one time that we actually collaborated together, was seeing people from different ages at your concert, because we're used to going to concerts and expecting a certain kind of a crowd, but what was amazing was the variety and the different ages that came to your concert. Was that an intention? Or, I mean, how do you make music? How do you write music and it's accessible and liked by so many different people?
Well, I mean, I think that speaks more to just the nature of folk music in general. I don't think we planned at all what to kind of have that wide range of audience ages. I think when we started, we thought we're gonna get a lot of grandmas listening to this.
Oh, really?
And then slowly we found out, a lot of our age group is interested in this, and then a lot of them started playing it in their cars, I believe, and the kids kind of got hooked to it. Mm-hmm. I think if you listen to it, it's really simple music. I always believe there's beauty in simplicity. Yeah. Honestly, like I rarely consider myself a musician in that sense. I feel like I love playing music. I'm pretty adequate at what I do. But none of other than our singer, the other two of us, we're not full-time musicians. I would consider ourselves hobbyists. So we just do what we love to do. So it's been. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit.
No, it's all good.
So because of that, it's kind of kept our music on a much simpler level, and I think because it's simple and it's easy to understand and it's easy to digest, everyone could kind of enjoy it much more so. And it just when you're a kid and you teach you to sing, they teach you simple melodies and you like to sing that, and we kind of like to keep that naivete in our music. Yeah. And I think that's why it appeals to the kids more than anything. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned music being a hobby, but you're an active person, and I've always seen you collaborate with a number of musicians, both as a musician but also as a photographer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your hobbies? Maybe if you want to talk about your professional life as a photographer, you're welcome to do so. But whatever comes to mind, because I interview people and they're musicians, but it's always fascinating to know what else they do in life.
So yes, I've something to know about me. I'll tell people right off the bat. My hearing is pretty shot, so I don't know why, but for most of my life, I've had about 50% hearing loss. So my eyesight, on the other hand, 20/20, I have the vision of an eagle. So because of that, even though I would say most of my life, like music has been my passion, the thing that makes me most happy, the thing that relaxes me, the thing that fulfills me. I always feel like there is this ceiling, and I'm constantly pushing that ceiling a little higher and a little higher, but there's something there, where I don't feel like I can just fly. With my photography and visual work, I don't feel like there's ever that barrier. Yeah. So I'm definitely a lot stronger, a lot more skilled, a lot more confident. So I found that to be a much more suitable way to earn a living and make an income. But I've also used it a lot of time to kind of curry favor with musicians and to use it as a vehicle to become friends and to socialize with musicians that I like. I've done tons of CD packaging designs, band photos, and I've made a lot of good friends and connections through that. So I've kind of, used that strength to feed my passion on this end. Yeah. But the most interesting thing in all of this is how I felt like these two passions kind of feed into each other. So as I work on my visual skills, it strengthens my musicianship. As I work on my musicianship, it strengthens my visual skill. And I always encourage people to kind of explore, if they're a musician, paint a little, if you're a painter, play some music, and you'll see like different avenues and connections in your brain open up because of it.
Yeah. Well, going back to the Mher, the musician, what are some bands, some singers that are currently working, whether it's Armenian or non-Armenian, maybe of your generation, that you would like to mention and suggest to some listeners?
Right. As far as Armenian, I always say like there's about 5 or so that have like directly influenced our projects, and I kind of go back to them over and over to kind of draw inspiration. The first one is a trio just like us. I call them our sisters because we've kind of become like that. It's a trio from New York. They're called Zulal. They are an a cappella trio. They sing traditional Armenian songs just like us, and they were kind of, when we started putting this project together, the model of like, this is what we want to model ourselves after it, in terms of how they're set up, the way they work, some of their arrangements. So they're great to check out. Vahakn Ajamian, I mentioned earlier, he did an album called Hata with a friend of his back in, I want to say 76, 78, somewhere around there, with a friend of his, Hobbies. And as far as anything that comes close to sounding like our project, it's that. So they basically, again, traditional songs, and they sound a lot like Simon and Garfunkel, almost exactly, actually. Yeah. But singing in Armenian.
I see.
And we kind of come close to that, but I feel like we have a lot more rock and roll, Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and all the grunge bands have influenced us a lot more. And then the other 3 are Mher Vahakn, which I mentioned, oud player from Greece, similar things. Mher Vahakn, who's an Armenian jazz singer. She does amazing stuff. Yeah. And the last 2 are actually, one of the last ones much more traditional. Monik Grigorian has a live album called Live in Arles. It's what I go to when I want to get more of the traditional inspiration and the traditional Armenian sound. And another one I have a lot of respect for is Aran Dikjan. And for him, another oud virtuoso, similar to Mher Vahakn Ajamian in a lot of ways, mostly instrumental. And I just love the many projects he's done, collaborating with musicians from other Greek musicians, Turkish musicians, and then he's had his own like jazz project, stuff like that. And then another one that's great, the Armenian Navy Band, has a few albums that are just absolutely mind-blowing. So those are kind of the people as far as Armenian music go. Our English music influences most people know about, Pro Jam, Alice in Chains, all those grunge bands. And then lately, I've personally been listening to much more country music. So I've been really into Johnny Cash and that stuff. So
this is kind of a broad question and maybe tough to answer, but where do you see the future of Armenian music in the diaspora? Because when we think of diaspora, especially in the United States, a few generations in, sometimes it's tough to keep the traditions or the music or the language. It's tough to do that. Sometimes in the former countries or states that Armenia was part of, sometimes maybe it was in some ways easier to keep those traditions. I mean, of course, it's always hard, but sometimes it feels as though it was easier. Here, it gets lost a little bit quicker, maybe, or maybe you might disagree with me, but where do you see the future of Armenian arts and music in general?
Ooh, that's a doozy. I feel like, we're some place where there's people running in 100 different directions. So, I mean, if we look at pop music, or what we call Armenian pop music, which you'll probably agree with me, most of it's utter crap, but it's really gone away from sounding at all Armenian to me. It's just gone to this intercontinental mixture. I don't even know what it is I'm listening to anymore. Yes, they have Armenian words to the song, but as far as melody, it's gone so far away from even feeling Armenian, and that's just a feeling. I mean, I'll never consider myself a musicologist. I can't explain it musically, but when I listen to it, it's not reminiscent of any Armenianness. So that's going in one direction, and in the other field, you have bands like us, like Zulal, that are trying to kind of keep our tradition and our culture alive. But I feel like, especially, not talking about Zula, but especially for us, I'm not even so much interested in only keeping the culture alive, but I feel like I have a responsibility to kind of create this new branch, what I hope for, especially, I mean, it's tough because I don't know who's coming up behind us to kind of keep it going, but I would love to see a new genre, what I would call Armenian-American music. I take my lead from, I look at Italian-American music, Greek-American, and a lot of these cultures that have come and stayed here, and now they're in, they have a few generations on it. So it's like they've created a new entity, a new language, a new that's now enough to be called its own thing. So it definitely comes from the old country, but it's something new, and there's something beautiful in that. So that's kind of my hope. Other than that, I look at from the classical world, how you and I met. It's through the Lark Musical Society in Glendale, and what they've been able to accomplish as far as just music education is also something beautiful, and they've kept it much more traditional and teaching another generation. So I see a ton of young kids that at least have the knowledge and the ability to keep these traditions alive. So, and I'm sure there's other programs that I'm not aware of that are also doing the same thing. So I agree with you. It is definitely a struggle as we go forward. And as I've discussed this with my dad, he always says, because assimilation is inevitable, but what you want to try to do is make it less painful. So you don't want to go from one generation of we only listen to Armenian music, like my parents' generation. I mean, my dad is a little bit different, but like people of his generation, you know, they mostly listen to Armenian music. To our generation, where it was going to be, well, we don't listen to any Armenian music. That's what I was trying to train to. All right, can we go another generation where they listen to a little bit of Armenian music? But so obviously at some point it's inevitable. It's going to happen where whether it's through just living in this country for so many generations, or you intermarry, and it kind of dilutes it. But it does just in this way. It's less painful, so the loss isn't sudden; it's gradual. The
Smithsonian Folklife Festival you played a year or two ago, right?
We played last summer, summer of 2016.
How was that experience, and what did it entail?
So, the way the festival is set up, every year they kind of have like a main feature, and I don't know if they do this every year, but last year for sure they had the main feature, and then they had kind of like a second feature. So the main feature last year was Basque music and the Basque country. And what's cool about the Folklife Festival is not just about music. So it's about folk and life. So it entails anything from dance, theater, performance, games, arts and crafts, food. So all that kind of gets thrown into the mix. So they have demonstrations on games they play, or special dancing. They have interactive stuff. They have special meals that they're cooked. So that was that part. We were actually involved in the smaller feature, which was called Sounds of California. So for that, they were basically tapping into all the different minorities and diasporas that are present in California.
Which is a lot.
Yes. And what was cool is we actually got paired up in a lot of our panel discussions and lectures with another trio that is similar to us in some sense, where they are born and raised in California, but their heritage is from the Basque region as well. So they sing traditional Basque song, a little modern twist. So, and there are three ladies, which I got to get to know and be friends with. Their group is called Noka. That's spelled Noka. You want to check them out. And we found out a lot of similarities in that sense, where they deal with the same issues of people getting on their case for breaking away from the traditional way of singing and playing, and so we had that in common. So as far as our experience, we had a bunch of small performances. We got to perform one evening concert on the National Mall, which was mind-blowing experience for me, just knowing who else has gotten a chance to play there. So that was definitely an honor. And then what's really cool is in 2018, which is next summer, the main feature is going to be Armenia. So I'm really excited to see the type of programs and musical acts and what they're going to put together for that.
I want to hear some juicy band stories about maybe whether it's at a concert things went wrong and you had to kind of fix it, or maybe within band members, if you don't mind sharing. But if you do, I completely understand. Maybe you could tell us a fun story that happened with the band.
The one that always comes to mind, I love telling this one, is I want to say it was 2015. We got invited to go out to Philadelphia to perform a genocide commemoration event for the 100th anniversary. And they got us a hotel in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I forgot what the town was called, but it was somewhere near, I believe it's Villanova, is the main university. So it's like a little college town, you know. So they tell us, you know, they put us in the hotel. One of the mornings we wake up, we want to go get breakfast. So we go, hey, let's go to we ask around, like, there's a nice little diner down the street. Sure. 10-minute walk, we get there, you know, we're sitting down, the server comes to ask for our orders, you know, so, and, you know, the three of us are sitting there, and because, you know, I got coffee, and Salo goes coffee, and our lead guitarist, Ryan, turns to the server, and this is where you notice how much we're from LA. So he turns to the server and goes, what kind of coffee do you serve? And the waitress looks at him, this puzzled look, and she goes, caffeinated or decaffeinated? And we were just busting up. It's such a like trendy hipster thing to ask. And I was like, what beans do you serve? And just looking at him like, we're in a diner. In the middle of Philadelphia. Like, I don't think they know these things.
I was hoping he would ask for some Armenian coffee.
As far as like crazy stuff on stage, the funniest thing, and this happens almost every show we do, our singer has the bladder of a 3-month-old baby. So
they're gonna hate you for saying this, Mher. They're gonna hate you.
We've embarrassed ourselves much more than that. Yeah, we're on stage and we're playing this. It was like a group concert, so it's about 5 different acts that night. So, but we're opening up the concert, so we're the first ones on, and we're sitting on stage, guitars, you know, on our laps, and the curtain's down, where we're sitting, like, where we'd be performing, and my singer turns to me and goes, do I have time to go to the bathroom? I'm like, run. He runs to the bathroom and comes back right before we have to go on. So.
Last thing that comes to mind is the new album, which I cheated and got a little taste of when you were visiting Seattle for one of your photography gigs that you had here, and it was great seeing you. And you also shared with my wife and I some of the album. When is it coming out? And if you want to share some details, maybe of songs or whatever you want to share, if you want to share.
When is it coming out? I always keep saying it 3 months, but I've been saying that for like 3 years now. We've been working on it, and like I said, because it's a labor of love, and because we all have other responsibilities and families to take care of, that it kind of always gets put on the back burner. Yeah. But we've been recording for the last 3 to 4 years. Luckily, our singer is also a sound engineer, a very talented one at that. Yeah. And he has his own studio, so we've kind of been afforded the luxury of taking our time and working through things and making them perfect.
That's great.
So it's a lot like our first album, which was called Retrograde. We kind of wanted to do at least one more before diving into something a little different. So it's similar, traditional and some pop songs and a good mixture of different types of from different genres. We're almost done. Most of it has been recorded. We're in the mixing and final tweak stage. So our singer just went on vacation to Vietnam. So I think he's coming back in a day or two. So we'll get back to work on it. I'm hoping at some point this year we'll have it all mixed and mastered and wrapped up.
Yeah.
I still don't know what the album's going to be called. For our working title for the longest time was Armenian-American, which was a play on the Americana genre of music and Armenian. But unfortunately for us, there's most Armenians I ask have no idea what Americana is.
Yeah.
To them, it's just an outdoor shopping mall. So I don't know if we want to go with that connotation. We've been messing around with the title en route as an option, but I'm not sure if you have any suggestions. I'd love to hear it.
No suggestions, but I'll maybe post it on our Facebook page and. Nice. Maybe we'll get some suggestions.
And as far as the music on the album, it's we definitely went a little bit more bluesy, a little bit more country, a little bit more rock, pushing the envelope from that end.
Yeah.
First one was a lot softer, I think.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit slightly more upbeat and rock and bluesy.
Yeah. Well, Mher, it was great talking to you. Is there anything that we missed that you want to share?
I don't know. I can't think of too much. I mean, if you got what you needed from me, and I truly enjoyed discussing this. Any opportunity I get.
Yeah. Well, no, it was great, and the funny thing is that. All of these things came to mind when we spent the day and a half or so together here in Seattle when you were here for work, and right. I was happy we got that time to hang out because we don't often see each other. But I was happy.
That's true.
I was happy for that.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you like. I don't know if you grew up with it. Because you're a little bit younger than me, but like Seattle, because of like when I was a teenager, like every band I liked pretty much was from that region. Every time I'm up there, like there's still this aura hanging over that city from that era that I could sense, which is impressive because I mean that's 20 years or so since all that music came out.
Yeah.
But it's really something special. So I don't know how much you get to you sense it, but I definitely do it every time I'm up there.
Yeah, well, you sure sense it more than I do because all of that music for me came after that era, and I listened to it, but it's not the same, I think, nostalgia that you have.
Right.
So
age plays a part in it. You know, I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
You know, and I think like someone, I forgot who it was. Like, I think they were actually talking about it in terms of like SNL or Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
It's like I can tell how old you are just by like who your favorite like SNL cast is.
Yeah.
And it's the same things. Like I feel like the music you listen to, you know, from the time you're 12 to 20, always has kind of like a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
So, you know, I grew up with that, and I'm sure you listen to all this stuff, you know, like later on in your life, or when you were within those age, it wasn't the main thing you were listening to.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, but for me, it was the main thing. Even though I don't listen to that genre as much anymore, it's still like as far as any genre of music, that's the most nostalgic for me.
Well, it was great talking to you and getting to know you on a different level with all those answers. You had some great answers.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome anytime. Hopefully, when you do have the record in hand, we'll have the whole band together. If all of you are in the same place at the same time, we'll do another one of these.
Actually, I think I have a tendency to talk the most. I think it'd be good if maybe I'll finagle just them to talk with you.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Mher. It was great having you on, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care.